There is an oil that costs $3 at any health food store in America that reverses the crow's feet, the crepe lines, the fine radiating wrinkles, and the deep lateral eye creases that form at the outer corner of your eyes over years of sun exposure and expression without a laser, without a needle, and without a single clinic appointment. One bottle treats both eyes every night for 4 to 5 months. It works by delivering an exceptionally rare plant-derived retinoid precursor directly into the thinnest, most collagen-depleted skin on the human face. The skin surrounding the orbital socket, which at zero point 0.5 millimeters thick, is less than one-fourth the depth of skin anywhere else on the body, triggering cell renewal, collagen synthesis, and elastin rebuilding at the fibroblast level with zero of the inflammation, peeling, or photosensitivity that prescription retinoid creams produce in the same tissue. Himalayan herbalists prescribed it for skin around the eye socket in the 12th century. Tibetan physicians documented it in the Gyushi, the foundational text of Tibetan medicine, as a preparation specifically indicated for the loosening skin around the eyes that accompanies aging. A double-blind clinical trial published in the Journal of Clinical and Aesthetic Dermatology confirmed statistically significant reductions in crow's foot depth, periorbital wrinkle count, and lateral eyeline severity after 6 weeks of nightly application. That trial was peer-reviewed, published, and absorbed by the cosmetic clinic industry in complete silence. They did not stop recommending this oil because it failed. They stopped because it worked too well. An oil that costs $3 and reverses eye wrinkles permanently cannot sustain a $450 laser resurfacing session or a $300 botulinum toxin injection repeated every 3 months for the rest of a patient's life. And what cannot sustain those sessions cannot sustain those clinics. This is the story of the cheapest periorbital wrinkle treatment ever documented and the clinic industry that has been bearing it for decades. If these stories matter to you, subscribe and hit the bell. This is where we open the vaults the cosmetic industry welded shut. Now let me take you back to where this story begins. The year is 1137 AD, and a Tibetan physician named Yuthok Yonten Gompo the Younger is completing the revised edition of the Gyushi, the Four Tantras, the most comprehensive medical encyclopedia ever compiled in the Tibetan tradition, and the foundational clinical text that guided Himalayan medicine for the next 9 centuries. Inside its pages, in the section devoted to skin and tissue restoration, Gonpo describes an oil pressed from the seeds of a sea buckthorn shrub that grows across the high-altitude valleys of the Himalayas, the Tibetan Plateau, and the mountain ranges stretching from Central Asia into Siberia. He prescribes it specifically for what he describes as the wrinkling and loosening of the delicate skin surrounding the eye that arrives with age and high-altitude sun exposure, two of the most aggressive drivers of periorbital collagen loss known to modern dermatology. That oil was sea buckthorn seed oil, Hippophae rhamnoides, a shrub that has been growing across the mountain ranges of Eurasia for over 2 million years and whose seed oil is now available at any health food store in the world for $3 a bottle. Gompo was not theorizing. He was documenting observed clinical outcomes from a medical tradition that had been treating high-altitude skin aging. Some of the most severe UV-driven periorbital wrinkling on Earth for generations before he put pen to paper. And he was not alone in this discovery. In traditional Mongolian medicine, sea buckthorn berry and seed preparations were applied to the facial skin around the eyes, specifically to address the extreme sun and wind damage of the Central Asian steppe, conditions that produce crow's feet in people in their 20s. In ancient Chinese medicine, sea buckthorn was classified as a longevity herb and applied topically for skin tissue recovery in the orbital region by Tang Dynasty court physicians who documented its effects in medical texts that survived into the modern era. In Russia, where sea buckthorn grows wild across Siberian river valleys, folk medicine practitioners applied the seed oil to facial wrinkles for centuries, before Soviet-era researchers at the Institute of Nutrition in Moscow began studying why it worked and published their findings in state medical journals beginning in the 1950s. 4 traditions, 1 mountain shrub, all of them pointing to the skin around the eyes as the place this oil does its most documented work. Here is exactly what is happening in the skin around your eyes when this oil is applied. The periorbital zone, the skin surrounding the orbital socket, is the most structurally vulnerable area of the human face for 3 compounding reasons. First, it is the thinnest skin on the body with almost no subcutaneous fat cushion to buffer it from the constant mechanical movement of blinking, squinting, and smiling that occurs tens of thousands of times every day. Second, it has the lowest density of sebaceous glands of any facial skin zone, meaning it produces almost no natural oil to maintain barrier function and hydration. And third, it is directly exposed to the UV radiation that drives the MMP enzyme cascade that severs collagen and elastin without the natural sun protection of eyebrows and the orbital brow ridge, providing meaningful coverage for the lateral and lower orbital skin where crow's feet form. The result is that the periorbital skin loses collagen approximately 3 times faster than any other area of the face and responds to the sun damage that initiates wrinkling at an earlier age and with greater visible severity than anywhere else. Sea buckthorn seed oil addresses this cascade through a combination of active compounds found in significant concentration in almost no other plant oil on Earth. Its most extraordinary component is a naturally occurring carotenoid called beta-carotene present at concentrations that give the oil its characteristic deep orange color, which the skin's own enzymatic machinery converts directly into retinoic acid inside the cells of the dermis. Retinoic acid is the biologically active form of vitamin A that accelerates cell renewal, stimulates fibroblast collagen synthesis, and reverses the structural thinning that creates periorbital wrinkles. It is the same molecule that prescription retinoid creams deliver synthetically at concentrations that routinely cause irritation, barrier disruption, and photosensitivity in the thin skin surrounding the eyes. Side effects so common in periorbital retinoid use that most dermatologists advise patients to avoid applying prescription retinoids within the orbital area entirely. Sea buckthorn seed oil delivers its beta-carotene precursor at a concentration the skin metabolizes at its own pace, producing the retinoic acid it needs without the synthetic overload that drives irritation. The clinical trial published in the Journal of Clinical and Aesthetic Dermatology measured this outcome directly. The treated group showed equivalent collagen stimulation to retinoid treatment with 0 documented instances of periorbital irritation or barrier disruption. Beyond its retinoid precursor content, sea buckthorn seed oil is the only plant oil on Earth that contains all 4 fat-soluble vitamins A, D, E, and K simultaneously in therapeutically relevant concentrations. Vitamin K directly addresses the vascular fragility beneath the periorbital skin that contributes to the dark shadowing that makes eye wrinkles appear deeper and more severe than they are. Vitamin E neutralizes the free radicals generated by UV radiation at the orbital rim before they can initiate the MMP cascade that severs collagen. And the oil's unique fatty acid profile, with a ratio of omega-3 to omega-7 fatty acids found in no other seed oil, provides the specific lipid precursors that the orbital dermis needs to rebuild its barrier function and restore the moisture retention that keeps the thin periorbital skin plump and wrinkle-resistant between applications. One oil, 5 simultaneous mechanisms at a cost of $3 a bottle. Before I go any further, I need to stop here because what you have just learned is one chapter of a document the cosmetic clinic industry has been keeping closed for a very long time. Everything they buried is inside the complete health vault. The periorbital fascia release technique documented in a 2018 facial rehabilitation study that physically loosens the fibrous adhesions tethering crow's feet lines into the dermis. The structural anchoring that holds wrinkle lines in place even after the surrounding tissue has recovered using nothing but fingertip pressure applied in a specific sequence for 2 minutes each night. The dietary carotenoid loading protocol that saturates the orbital dermis with beta-carotene precursors from the inside simultaneously as topical sea buckthorn delivers them from the outside, creating a dual-direction retinoid supply that outperforms any single pathway intervention. The overnight humidity retention method that increases sea buckthorn's penetration depth in the periorbital area by 60% using nothing but a clean eye mask worn during sleep, documented in transdermal pharmaceutical delivery research and applicable at 0 additional cost. And the complete sea buckthorn periorbital protocol from this video with exact application quantities, techniques specific to the delicate orbital tissue, and a documented 90-day wrinkle reversal timeline. Over 10 additional guides covering skin, hair, hormones, gut health, and sleep, all in one vault. No filler, straight to the point. The link is in the description, first line. But stay right here because the clinic industry suppression of this oil is where the story becomes genuinely infuriating. The global periorbital treatment market, laser resurfacing, RF frequency eye tightening, botulinum toxin for crow's feet, chemical peels targeting the lateral orbital zone, and the eye cream category specifically formulated for wrinkle correction was valued at an estimated $6.8 billion in 2023. The average botulinum toxin injection for crow's feet costs between $250 and $450 per session and requires retreatment every 3 to 4 months as the toxin clears and muscle activity resumes. A patient who begins crow's foot treatment at 40 and continues through 60 will spend between $15,000 and $27,000 on that single facial zone across 2 decades of maintenance injections. Fractional laser resurfacing of the periorbital area averages modern $200 to $2,500 per session, with 2 to 4 sessions typically recommended. Radiofrequency eye tightening runs $800 to $500 per session. The average eye wrinkle cream at the prestige skincare counter costs $65 to $180 for a 15 milliliter jar that lasts 4 to 6 weeks at twice daily application. Every single one of those revenue streams depends on one foundational belief being unquestioned inside the mind of every patient who points to their crow's feet in a clinic mirror. The belief that the skin around the eye is too thin, too delicate, and too structurally compromised to respond to anything short of a laser, a needle, or a heavily concentrated pharmaceutical retinoid. Sea buckthorn seed oil was studied in Soviet-era research laboratories in the 1950s. It was prescribed in Tibetan medical texts in the 12th century. It was documented in peer-reviewed dermatology journals in multiple countries. And yet, if you walked into any cosmetic clinic in the United States today and asked your injector about sea buckthorn seed oil for periorbital wrinkles, the answer would be silence, followed by a recommendation for the next available botulinum toxin appointment. You cannot patent the carotenoid composition of hypophae rhamnoids. The sea buckthorn shrub has been producing beta-carotene, tocopherols, and omega-7 fatty acids in its seeds across the mountain ranges of Eurasia for 2 million years. You cannot build a 3 to 4 month repeat billing cycle around a $3 bottle that a patient applies at home with her ring finger for 5 months. You cannot fill laser suite bookings with patients whose periorbital skin is rebuilding its own collagen scaffolding from a retinoid precursor delivered by a pressed seed. The clinic industry does not argue with sea buckthorn oil. It simply ensures you never hear its name spoken in a consultation room. If you have made it this far, you already know more about periorbital skin aging than 99% of the patients booking their next crow's foot injection right now. Subscribe and share this with someone who deserves to stop writing quarterly checks for wrinkles that a $3 bottle already reverses. Now here is exactly what to do. Go to a natural cosmetic supplier or online retailer and purchase 100% pure cold-pressed sea buckthorn seed oil. There are 2 types of sea buckthorn oil commonly sold: berry oil and seed oil. For periorbital wrinkle treatment, you want seed oil specifically as it contains the beta-carotene retinoid precursor complex and the omega-7 fatty acid profile documented in the clinical research. The seed oil is deep orange in color. A 30 milliliter bottle costs between $3 and $8 and contains enough oil for 4 to 5 months of nightly full periorbital treatment. Because sea buckthorn seed oil is highly pigmented and will temporarily stain very fair skin if applied too heavily, use the minimum effective quantity, 1 small drop per eye, applied nightly before bed only, never in the morning before sun exposure. Using your ring finger, the weakest finger, exerting the least pressure on the most delicate facial skin, tap 1 drop of the oil along the orbital bone beneath each eye and at the outer corner of each eye where crow's feet originate, working in tiny inward motions from the temple toward the nose along the lower orbital rim. Do not press, drag, or rub. Tap only with the lightest possible touch, depositing the oil in the orbital groove where the deepest lines form and where the skin is most depleted of the fatty acids and retinoid precursors the oil delivers. Allow the oil to absorb completely before sleeping, approximately 10 to 15 minutes. Apply every night without exception. The cell renewal acceleration driven by retinoic acid conversion from beta-carotene is a cumulative process. The Journal of Clinical and Aesthetic Dermatology trial documented its most significant measurable wrinkle depth reductions at the 6-week mark with consistent nightly use. At 30 days, a surface texture in the periorbital area typically begins to feel smoother and denser to the touch. At 60 days, the fine radiating lines at the outer corner of the eye begin to soften measurably. At 90 days, the structural improvement in collagen density produces visible changes in crow's foot depth that are apparent in normal daylight without any magnification. A 55-year-old woman in Edinburgh had been managing crow's feet with quarterly botulinum toxin injections for 6 years when she discontinued the appointments and began nightly sea buckthorn seed oil application. At her 8-week mark, she described the skin at the outer corner of her eyes as feeling fundamentally different, denser, more attached to the tissue beneath it, less papery to the touch than it had felt in a decade. At 12 weeks, a family member who had not seen her since she stopped injections commented that she looked rested and well. She had spent $5 on a bottle of sea buckthorn seed oil. Her previous annual injection spend had been $1,800. Yuthuk Yonten Gampo the Younger wrote about this oil in 1137 AD because the physicians of the Tibetan medical tradition had already been observing its effects on aging periorbital skin for generations before he compiled their knowledge into the Gyushi. The Mongolian steppe healers knew it. The Tang Dynasty court physicians documented it. The Soviet researchers confirmed it in a laboratory. And a peer-reviewed dermatology journal published a double-blind trial that confirmed everything a 12th century Tibetan physician had observed with his own eyes from across 9 centuries of separation. The knowledge has never been wrong. The oil has never been reformulated. What changed was the construction of a $6.8 billion industry around the eye socket and the institutional decision made quietly, maintained consistently, enforced through total silence that a $3 bottle of pressed seed oil would never be mentioned in any consultation room that industry controlled. The sea buckthorn shrub does not know about quarterly earnings reports. The beta-carotene inside its seeds does not care about laser-sweet booking rates, and the fibroblasts in the skin around your eyes have never once stopped being capable of rebuilding what decades of sun and expression have worn away. They were simply never given the raw material to do it. That raw material is $3. It has always been $3. And it has been waiting on that health food store shelf, patient, orange, and unchanged for someone to remember what a Himalayan physician wrote down in the 12th century, and what every clinic in the country has spent decades hoping you would never read. If this story changed the way you look at the expensive treatments in your cabinet, please subscribe and share this with everyone you know who has ever pointed at their crow's feet in a clinic mirror and been handed an injection estimate. We are uncovering the history they tried to bury. Let's reclaim the future of our health together. The next vault opens soon, and the secrets hidden inside are even more profound. Subscribe now to ensure you don't miss it.